the drive. Tatum the finish. It is Banner 18. The mission commanded is mission accomplished.
What's up, everybody? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here live at TD Garden. You can see the banners behind me after a tough 108-105 overtime loss that I did not see coming ultimately, but also I will say, and I'm not just saying this now because it happened, it's at the end of the day, two good teams that are playing in the second round, and every one of these games is going to be a battle, and this one was, and New York made more plays. Normally I do these shows, I recorded them the night of, and I post them the next morning. But I could sense the anxiety for a lot of people watching this game and just wanted to kind of jump on here and share a little bit about why I felt like there was actually some positives to draw, as I always do after these postseason games, but also why when you look at the big picture, there's really not huge cause for concern for this team. And that doesn't mean I'm guaranteeing anything's going to happen because you just can't do that. That's what makes basketball fun. But I felt like there were a lot of things to draw from this game. And I already know tomorrow the discussion is going to be all about, they took 63s and all they do is chuck threes and Tatum didn't show up. And I know that's going to be the ESPN, national media narrative. And so figured those of us that have been kind of seeing this team day in and day out can kind of share a little bit of context to kind of what happened here. So that is my initial takeaways, and I'll share my initial takeaways of kind of why that is. And it always, as always, feel free to put in questions in the chat. I'm testing this out, see how many of you guys joined, late nights, how many people join tomorrow, and we'll kind of see what works better for people. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing that I got out of this game is that the Celtics just could not hit threes. And I know that everybody's going to say they took too many, they should have driven to the basket, they should have gotten other looks. And I agree. I felt I was super frustrated watching the fourth quarter in particular, that they were, especially, in a late game situation, you wanted to see Tatum drive to the basket and that contested three. Like, that's not what anybody wanted to see. At the same time, just looking here at these numbers, the Knicks went 17 of 37 from three, and the Celtics went 15 of 60. If you simulate that game 7 times, I think one time it's going to happen that on 37 attempts, and I'm talking about the quality of attempts that they got today, and they took some really bad ones. I have in my mind, I have a montage of bad threes the Celtics took today. So, out of those 60, probably 10 should not have been taken for sure. Still, for the Knicks to have made 2 threes more than the Celtics, I think is indicative of the fact that they just had an abysmal shooting performance on a night where they really that's the worst case scenario, right? To start a new series, you're finally getting clean looks and nobody was hitting. I mean, if you look down the line here, Jaylen Brown 1 for 10, Tatum 4 of 15, Derek White 5 of 16. Like, Derek White 5 of 16, I thought he had some great looks in this game, and then he just was not able to deliver. He was unable to hit it, and that's ultimately reflective of the fact that he just had a bad shooting night ultimately. And that doesn't mean that everybody else is it doesn't mean that they got all clean looks and that there was no problems offensively. But I felt like when you go back and rewatch this game, and I'm going to do that as soon as I finish writing my post-game story later today, you're going to see that there's a lot better looks than you expected. So that's the first thing I'm going to say is that you simulate this game multiple times. The Knicks actually made 2 threes more than the Celtics. I don't think that's going to happen based on the shot profile. OG Anunoby, shout out to him. He hit 6 of 11 in this game. You have any one of the Celtics players have a good shooting night like that, and you're not in this position. And he was a big part of keying that comeback. So, and this is a great point. Adam says here, we missed a bunch of threes even after offensive rebounds, which is very unlike this team. I asked Jrue Holiday after the game if he liked the looks that they got. And he said, it's a mix of both. Like, yeah, we probably could have, I asked, do you like the looks that you got, or do you feel like you guys settled a little bit? And he said it's a mix of both. But ultimately, there were a lot of plays, and he specifically pointed to what Adam here in the chat is saying, that they missed threes off offensive rebounds. So even when there were moments where they got the most classic momentum threes, everybody in this building is holding their breath, they did not hit those momentum shots. Derek White, who was the king of those momentum threes, did not hit those. Nobody was really able to find a rhythm. I thought Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum both settled a few times. I thought Jrue Holiday, who was 2 of 7 from 3 in this game, I thought he had a few that he settled. But generally speaking, those shots that have made the Celtics a historically great three-point shooting team did not go in this game. And sometimes that happens. It happened against Cleveland last year in one game. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything moving forward here. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen again. I don't feel any differently about the Knicks defense after this game than I did entering this game. So that's the first thing. The 3-point shot quality, I think, is going to surprise people if they choose to rewatch this game, which honestly, if you're a normal person, probably do something else and don't rewatch this game because it wasn't that fun. So that's the first thing. Second thing I'm going to say is Jrue Holiday, who I had a lot of concerns about his hamstring strain because he did miss 3 games in the first round. He misses the final 2 games. He wasn't even listed on the injury report as questionable. He was just automatic out. And so you wonder, like, is there a tear? Is there something that is going to prevent him from being able to play in the next round? They kind of wasted an awesome Jrue Holiday game. And I was thinking to myself, if they somehow find a way to win this game, it is going to be all about Jrue Holiday and the game-changing momentum plays that he was responsible for. 5 offensive rebounds for this one. He was the only Celtics starter that shot above 35% from the field. He goes 7 of 14 from the field, 2 of 7 from 3, which in this game was actually like fine. And he just made so many big plays. 5 of 6 rebounds were offensive rebounds, 3 assists, a steal. And I thought his defense on Jalen Brunson was really good, especially considering the fact that this is a guy that you're not going to stop, but you can try to slow him down and bother him. And I thought that he tired him out. He went at him offensively, picking him up 3/4 court, full court. Like, ultimately, this was not a Jalen Brunson game. He had 29 points, but he wasn't efficient, and he wasn't the reason why this happened. And so, again, Jrue afterwards said that he felt really good in this game. He said that he kind of tweaked his hamstring. He strained it earlier in the Orlando series. His teammates kind of carried that through to finish, and today he felt like he was running on adrenaline and he felt good out there. No issues. That was the quote. No issues for him hamstring. So looking ahead in the series, like I think Jrue Holiday, if at this point you haven't figured out how critical he is for this team, then you're not watching this team carefully enough, because he is just instrumental on both ends for them, especially on the defensive end, but just doing a little bit of everything for them. Tatum said after the game he's a Swiss Army knife. Al Horford, when I asked him about him after Game 5, he said, he's elite. There's nothing here that anybody can replace. So to me, is you're looking big picture here. You saw a guy who could have potentially been out for this series because we had 0 information about his hamstring strain after the Orlando series. Not only did he come back, but I thought that he was maybe Boston's most reliable player in this game. And so shout out to him. I think the hope is that he's able to respond. His hamstring is able to respond well. And that he said to me, he's going to see how he feels tonight, how he's going to feel tomorrow. We do have a media availability tomorrow, so maybe we'll get a little bit of an update for him. But yeah, this comment here, when Jrue scores 16 plus points, the Celtics hardly ever lose a game. That's completely true. And I think that you see in this game, he scored 16 points on high efficiency. That was like the one out of character thing that happened that pointed to the Celtics winning. And so I think, they had to switch Brunson off of him. Like, he was just a lead on both ends. And I always look at the big picture here. I think that a guy like him, just like Jalen, like, you want to make sure that he's good to go in the series. And I feel pretty good about where he's at after this one. And I also feel really good about how he's going to be able to impact this series defensively, because I think you were able to see that in this game. So I'm seeing some comments here on Kristaps Porzingis. And basically, if we have any news on him, he was not in the locker room post game. We did not really get much information about him. Joe said that he hadn't yet spoken to him. He said that he was just informed about the illness at the point where he was pulled out of the game, and that was midway through the second quarter. And so there's 2 things about Porzingis. I think that, and I'm straying from the encouraging signs thing, but there was 2 things about Porzingis that I think were noteworthy here. One is that he really struggled in the 13 minutes that he did play. 0 of 4 from the field has never felt so bad, I think, that as it did tonight, because ultimately, you see a guy who, was one of the best post-up players in the NBA over these past 2 seasons, suddenly kind of seems to have totally lost confidence. And I think everybody's talking about, can you not handle the physicality? Are they doing something differently defensively to him? When I'm watching Porzingis play, I'm watching a basketball player that has lost his confidence more than anything. And so, I don't know if this illness is something that's going to carry over into Game 2. I wish I had more information for you guys. I always feel bad when I have no information regarding guys' injuries, but this team keeps things pretty tight-lipped for a reason. And ultimately, I think you see with Porzingis that he was able to really he really struggled in this game and was pulled out and never came back in. I don't think he's why they lost this game, because they were up by 20 without him midway through that third quarter, and he had pretty much nothing to do with it. So I've always felt confident about this team without him. Obviously he brings another dynamic. He brings another level of versatility, all that. But at the same time, he is not going to be, I think, in this series, is not going to be what makes or breaks it. And I think you saw without him, they were fine. And so if he does miss more time with this illness, I'm worried about him on a personal level, because it is weird. He had this illness in late February and March. He missed 11 games. We never figured out what it is. I have no idea if what he has today has anything to do with that. But because he did have this mysterious illness, it's the first thing I thought. But ultimately, that, I think that they're going to be fine without him, even if he does have to miss some time. And the same way, and I honestly don't feel that way about Jrue Holiday. I think that Jrue Holiday impacts winning more on this specific team right now. Porzingis' ceiling is enormous. He can score a ton. Maybe people will disagree with me. You can let me know what you think in the chat. But I think that we saw it last year in the playoff run. Like, they have a ton of scorers in this team. And so even if Porzingis has to miss some time, like, I view him more as a guy that can come in and score and burst than somebody that they have to rely on. Unless they're forcing him the ball, then it becomes something that starts to kind of hinder them. So again, I think the positives to me is that I actually like the shot quality. And I think that they still took too many threes, and they should have, when shots were falling later on, they should have mixed it up a little bit. But if you were to replay this game, like if you could put this in an AI simulator, they will win this game more often than they will lose it, simply based on the shots that they were able to get off against the Knicks defense. And it was so weird to watch them go from Orlando, where they couldn't get any of them, to the Celtics, to this Knicks defense, where suddenly everything was available. And I saw a comment here. Yeah, I just thought the Knicks defense showed some promising things. I think drop coverage is mixed in there. And if the team could have shot 10% better, we're not talking about them blowing a 20-point lead. Like, you will never see these 3-point numbers again. Hopefully not. You will hopefully never see these 3-point numbers again. They were pretty wild when I was typing them up. Derek White 5 of 16, Jason Hayden 4 of 15. Like, this is as bad as it gets, really. For guys that ultimately, I know not everybody loves the 2-point style, but this team broke the record for most threes made in a single season in NBA history, right? Derek White is the all-time Celtics, maker in 3-pointers made. Sorry, that was jumbled here, but he has made more threes in a single season than anybody in Celtics history. So there are a lot of reasons why I don't think that it's going to happen again. Because I don't think this Knicks defense figured something out. I think it was just an off shooting performance. And when I'm going to rewatch this game, and I'll put something out if I think that was wrong. But I feel pretty good about that take, just from having watched this one. And I still didn't like the late game shots. I would have rather see Tatum do anything other than take that 3-point shot that he had just missed a whole bunch of. So those are the first things I'll say. I also want to acknowledge the fact that people are distraught. It's one game, and a game 1 loss always feels like it hits different for people. It always feels like there's an emotional toll because now you're trailing in a series. But last year they split the home games twice, right? They split them versus Miami, they split them versus Cleveland. And both of those series they closed out in 5, right? So just because you lose one game doesn't mean that all of a sudden now it's going to be a 7-game series or they're going to lose, because ultimately it just means that they're poised to be in the same position they were in twice last year. So if I think, if I know this team, they're going to come out in game 2 and they're going to win. And I can't promise you guys that. I can't guarantee that, because it's basketball and it's an unpredictable sport. And I've said that a million times, and anything can happen. And I do have a ton of respect for the Knicks players on that side. They were great college players. They're winners. They keep things competitive. So, there's no guarantee. But if I know the Celtics team, they're going to come out in game 2 and they're going to win this game. And we're going to be in the same exact position that we've seen many times, where the home team splits the first 2 games against a competitive team. And then we'll be in that position. So you win that game, and then the series starts at game 3. Because ultimately, I don't really care that much for home court advantage, because the Celtics have been phenomenal on the road. They were one of the best road teams in NBA history. So just keeping that in perspective, the game 1 losses always feel more dramatic. And we're not used to seeing this team lose game 1s. They didn't lose any game 1s last year. The last time they lost the game 1 was against Miami, and obviously they go on to lose that series. So I think there's a little bit of emotions from that as well. But ultimately, it doesn't necessarily indicate anything that we don't already know. And again, this was an overtime loss. So they made a couple additional plays here, and they win this game. And suddenly we're talking about how they were able to overcome a terrible shooting night and Porzingis going down, and all these things that happen, the 3-point shooting, and all, now you're talking about Jrue Holiday's return kind of being the main storyline here. So as a reporter, I'm always thinking about what's the story if they win and what's the story if they lose. And it was very apparent to me how drastically different the 2 stories would be, just based off the fact that the outcome was kind of in flux. That's always how it is. But it's just always kind of funny, because it's always panic and everything else in a loss. And so I have a couple more things, a quick message from our friends over at PrizePicks before that. But hold on and keep putting questions in the chat if you have, and I'll go through them at the end.
PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. Cash in on the basketball playoffs with PrizePicks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the core to your PrizePicks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, assists, take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. today. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. The basketball playoffs are here and the action is heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in on your favorite spots. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.
So the other thing I'm going to say here is that if you look around the league, the three teams that were the best teams in the NBA by far all season long were the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and the Boston Celtics, right? It was not close when you look at the top three teams all season. All three of those teams lose game one. And I still think all three of those teams are going to win those series. Again, it's unpredictable. If it was unpredictable, it wouldn't be fun, right? So just because you were the best in the regular season doesn't mean you're going to come away with a win here necessarily. But I think if you are looking for a little bit of perspective, this Thunder team, everybody was discussing this team as they were completely unbeatable, and they just blew, a 9-point lead with 3 minutes to go on an Aaron Gordon game winner, right? Like, that's why you have 7-game series, that's why the NBA is fun, and that's why you're supposed to enjoy the journey and not think any of it is going to come easily for you. No defending champion, this might make you guys feel worse, but no defending champion has come out of the second round since 2019. Right? No defending champion has been able to do it. So not only have teams not repeated, they literally have not been able to even make the conference finals. And the Celtics are well aware of that. So I don't think they ever took this Knicks team for granted. I think, maybe fans did, maybe media did. When you look at the predictions, they were overwhelmingly, the betting odds, everything was in favor of the Celtics. But at the same time, I think, if you kind of look at the grand scheme of things, like, this is what happened in the NBA over the first few days here. Yesterday and today, the top seeds all lost. And I expect all those teams to bounce back because they're consistent teams that responded to losing all year, right? The Celtics very rarely lose multiple games in a row because they go back to the film room and they look at what they did to themselves and they adjust. And I think in this game, you're going to see that the Celtics are going to clean up a lot of their mistakes. They're going to do a lot of things differently than what they did. I think they're going to see that they did settle points. I think defensively, there were a lot of things they could have done better. And because of the final score being 108-105, you're not necessarily going to look at the defense as the major concern here because 108 points for an overtime game is fine. But ultimately, there were a lot of times where I felt like they overhelped. Mikal Bridges gets a wide open corner three. Jalen Brunson got a wide open corner three in front of the Celtics bench where nobody was out there to close out on him. I think they're going to be kicking themselves at a lot of the mistakes that they made. The Knicks should shoot 46% from three in this game. And part of that was just they shot well, but I think the Celtics did not close out nearly as well as they should have. And they gave up on somewhere. They were in late rotations and kind of all of that. So everything here feels very fixable to me. I didn't see anything out of this New York team that felt like, oh, they actually have something on the Celtics that doesn't necessarily, I didn't see, I didn't predict. It wasn't what I saw during the regular season matchups. It was, they took their foot off the gas a little bit. The Knicks built all the momentum and they made the plays from there. And if we're talking about, this was a game 7, then none of this matters. But because it's just game 1, there's a lot of games left to play. I feel pretty optimistic about their ability to respond to this game and come out in game 2 and win. And then it doesn't matter anymore, right? Then you have a 1-1 series and you kind of go from there. And the other thing is that if you look at Tatum and Brown, Jason Tatum shoots 7 of 23 from the field. He was 4 of 8 in the first quarter. So he shoots 3 of 15 the rest of the way. Jaylen Brown, 7 of 20. He had a really good second quarter. Outside of that, he was really not efficient in this game. I think he took way too many threes. Something that I've really loved about how his game has evolved has been that he has moved away from taking 3-point shots and got into better looks. And I think that he kind of settled a little bit himself, as did a lot of other players, but he's kind of been better at all of that. So again, I think that they're going to look back at their individual performances and recognize that they're going to be a lot better. But if I look at Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, these are two guys that I have a lot of faith in because at this point, they've been here before. They've been down in series. They've been led. They've split games, and they're not going home right now freaking out because they dropped game 1 of the second round against the Knicks. They're going home ready to kind of review this one and figure out where they can get better. If this was a veteran team, if this was a young team, this was a team that had a really good regular season but has never really made deep playoff runs, maybe you look at this game and you say to yourself, are they going to be able to respond from like a heartbreaking loss? They kind of blew a great opportunity to go up 1-0. But I don't think you're going to see that mental factor here with this team the same way that you would for a lot of other kind of young teams. Like I think the Cavs probably are feeling a lot worse because they're not a proven playoff team. and Donovan Mitchell and them have never made it for the conference finals. And so I also think that Pacers team is more dangerous than this Knicks team, but that's not the point here. So, and hey, listen, I don't want to bring up 2022 right now, but since you brought it up in the chat, sometimes you steal a game and it doesn't end up kind of determining the pace and flow of that series. And you see here, 2022 Celtics stole game 1 versus the Warriors in the finals, and look how that ended up for us from the A to the K, right? So it does kind of come out. It does kind of come down to game 2, and game 2 now becomes a must-win game, whereas it would have been one of those games where you like win game 2, but maybe you lose it and you split it. I just have an enormous amount of faith in this team's ability to respond and to play a whole lot better. Questions, concerns is that Porzingis' availability and impact are both kind of up for debate right now. You're not really sure exactly what you're going to get out of him if he is available. Again, I don't know that his struggles were necessarily because he wasn't feeling well, but certainly they feel somewhat connected because he does play just 12 minutes, asks to come out, and doesn't return to this game. He might have been completely winded. He might have had something else going on, maybe a fever. Like, again, illness can mean a million different things. So I just don't know. And then the other piece is Hauser, who sprained his ankle in this game, and Jalen Brunson Muse. We will take questions from Jalen Brunson Muse. Asks here, why was Hauser removed from the rotation? It was a little bit perplexing for me. I think that they struggle when they have a 9-man rotation because they very rarely did during the regular season because you almost always had 1 or 2 players out. In this game, they started the game fully healthy, so they had a 9-man rotation, and Hauser was the odd man out. And he comes in the third quarter with 4 minutes to go, airballs his first 3. I think it was a little bit of a psychological toll that it took on him. The fact that he wasn't able to kind of get into any rhythm in the first half, doesn't even check in. And now his first 3 it didn't surprise me that he airballed that one. I think it was a little bit predictable at that point that this is not his usual rotation pattern. He usually comes in at the end of the first quarter. And so I think he might have gotten a little bit in his head. But then obviously he has the kind of worst moment of this game. And that's when he steps on OG Anunoby on the 3-point shot. Not only is that always a huge momentum play to give a guy 3 free throws who already is having a great night, but then also he's done for the game. And I think he'll probably miss a few games here based on the fact that he looked like he was in a ton of pain. And at the same time, also, I caught a glimpse of him post game, and he was definitely moving gingerly. So he was walking on his own weight. He wasn't with crutches, but he looked like he was in pain. So I think he misses some time here. So those are the things that you worry about. You're potentially down 2 rotation players, moving forward here. I didn't love the Sam Hauser substitution. I think that to give him a completely different substitution than what he's used to, and to come in, like you said, momentum was already switching. That was a really crucial stretch. The 5 minutes that he was on the floor, he was a -7 in those 4 minutes, so that was a tough stretch there, and then obviously culminated in an injury that had nothing to do with the substitution pattern. But I wouldn't have expected him to be completely out of the rotation. I think if you attribute it to one thing, it's just the fact that they don't often have 9 players. They don't often go 9 players deep, and I think that at full strength, that's what they have. You suddenly have Al Horford, who I view as a starter, coming off the bench here. So people asking about Baylor Shireman, I think Baylor has a great ceiling for this team. I think that he's going to be a playoff contributor in the future. I think maybe next year, maybe the year after that. I don't think that we're going to see him in the series. I think they're going to be comfortable going with 8. That being said, if you lose Porzingis, which again, I don't think it's going to happen, but I can't speak to his health. I don't know anything about it right now. You lose Sam Hauser, maybe they go to a Baylor or Torrey Craig. It's kind of let's see if this guy gives us a spark. But I would be very surprised to see that. So I guess just to recap here, as I'm sitting here at 1:15 in the morning, there's still, I actually don't know if there's any reporters here. I see a reporter, so there's still people here. I think the things that stand out to me most is that if you, like I said this a couple times already, but if you simulate this game multiple times, you're going to hit more shots than you did tonight. This is just not going to happen again, I don't think. And if game 2 happens and the exact same shot profile happens and this is what they hit, then I can say that it was my worst take of the year. So I'm ready to own up to it if that happens. But I felt like the Knicks gave them looks and gambled on things. And the Knicks players afterwards said it too. They said, like, we don't want them taking 63s, right? So I think everybody knows that they got clean looks here. The other thing that I'll say is that I have Tatum and Brown. They're not going to have the kinds of – it's going to be one of them. But the fact that both of them had such a poor performance, it's just going to be – it's almost insurmountable in the playoffs to win a game against a good team, because the 6th team is good. Get the 5th best record in the NBA this season when your star players combined for 14 of 43 shooting. Like, that's just kind of the game right there. And I don't like putting all the blame on two players, but they get all the praise. They're the guys that make the big bucks. They're the guys that usually step up in these moments. And tonight it just so happened to be that they struggled at the same time. And some of that is going to be a little bit overly mismatch hunting, a little bit slowing the pace down too much. But I do think that you're not going to see that happen again. So I don't think we're going to see this kind of loss again in the series. I picked the Celtics in 5. I picked it knowing that there were going to be a lot of battles in this game. I did not think this was going to be a cakewalk whatsoever. We've seen really competitive sweeps last year versus Indiana. That could have gone 7 games. They could have lost that series, but they made big plays. They didn't make those plays tonight. That's what made the difference. That made all the difference. And you go back to game 1 versus the Pacers last year. Jaylen Brown gets a deflection on Pascal Siakam and then hits a corner 3. And you suddenly have a 1-0 lead in a series that they had no business leading. They had no business leading that series. That turns into a sweep. So it's a huge momentum win for New York. It certainly increases their chances here. I don't think anybody expected this if you were to poll the media. But again, it's not like this is a bad team that came in here and caught Boston sleeping. This is a team that didn't give up when they were down by 20. So you got to give the credit to them. So if I have a concern right now, it's about the fact that they lost some guys in this game. It's Porzingis, Hauser. I don't have reason to think that Porzingis is not going to come back. I'm hearing actually from, I guess, some reporters did see him in the locker room. I did not. I think he was quick to exit. So we'll see exactly kind of what happens here. We'll get more information about them both tomorrow. The Celtics always release an injury report the day before a game. So they have to do that by 5 o'clock on Wednesdays. If you're watching this live, it's like 12 hours, 13 hours away, 14 hours away. And we'll get a concrete answer on whether Porzingis is still sick, if it's something that maybe he had a 24-hour virus that has something to do with a respiratory illness. I don't know. So I think, Knicks fans here saying that if they lost this game, the series was going to feel over. This certainly gave them such an opportunity here. So could the Knicks Celtics go down 0-2? Like, absolutely. I think anything can happen. Again, this is what I've always said. Like, somebody said I watched your podcast and you said that the Knicks had no shot. I did not say the Knicks had no shot. What I said was that I think that if you look on paper, the Celtics have a sizable advantage in so many different ways. Their players, their coaching. I think if you look at their shot profile, like they took 23 more threes than the Knicks tonight. But at the same time, like I always go back to 23 because nobody would have picked the Miami team, and the Miami team went up 3-0. So if you have respect for the opponent, then you have respect for them, their ability to win some games. And I have a ton of respect for this Knicks team. And I went on a Knicks show today, New York's Post Sports, I think was the one, and I said that too. Like I don't necessarily see a place where the New York has an advantage, but they have winning players. And I have a lot of respect for Jalen Brunson and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart, and they won a national championship and all of that. So I'm going to actually stick with my prediction, which was Celtics in 5. Winning 4 games in a row is going to be a tall task for this team. Probably, if I could switch it right now, I would change it to Celtics in 6, but I'm not going to switch it because I think the pathway is still there. But there are going to be 4 battles. There's going to be a ton of battles to come. I don't think that these are going to be easy wins. If you look at the first round, the Knicks battled in every single one of those games. They lost 2, they won 4, but they were in all of those games. And I think that's kind of representative of what this Knicks team has done all year. And even, the regular season, game 4, that was an overtime loss, right? And the Celtics just made more plays than the Knicks did. And this is an interesting point here from Madison, coming in with some good analysis here at 1:20 in the morning. And Jrue has been down 0-2 in 2 series and still won a chip that season. I was wondering how he was so chill post-game until I remembered that. Jrue is one of the most chill players on the team as far as just post-game demeanor and all of that. So you're probably seeing a little bit of that as well. But certainly I think that's the advantage. And when I'm talking about my confidence in this team, I think a lot of it comes down to guys that have just been there before that are not going to, we can overreact, fans can overreact, media can overreact, all of that. But you want at this moment to make sure the players don't overreact because they tense up and they start to get really, really nervous and freak out and go into game 2 thinking, it's our life is on the line here. I think you're going to see them play a lot more tight than you want. And so that'll be it for me tonight. You can watch the full post-game show on CLNS Media. If you want to hear the players themselves speak, Jrue Holiday spoke after the game. Jason Tatum spoke after the game. Jaylen Brown spoke after the game. All of those guys, nobody really said much. I always encourage you to watch so you can kind of catch their demeanor and their tone and everything because I think sometimes it reads differently than the quotes do. But you can watch all that. So, and again, I do think that both of these teams have been really good on the road this season. And you might see that come into play as well. So obviously you want to take care of home court. They did not do that tonight. Jaylen Brown said it. We let that in the home crowd. But this is not a Celtics team that's scared about going into Madison Square Garden. They've been awesome on the road all season. I've traveled a lot with them this season, and I saw them just kind of go through road trips. They went 6-0 in their last road trip. They won both of their games at MSG this season. So I don't think they're going into this game feeling nervous about the fact that they have to be on the road. So we'll see how game 2 looks. I think game 2 is going to be a massive one, a little bit sooner than I expected there to be a massive game. But if they win this one, I think you can put a lot of the concerns to bed. And again, anytime you blow a 20-point lead, it's also because you had a 20-point lead. And they built a 20-point lead despite the fact they weren't shooting particularly well because they were just playing well, and they were able to do other things, and they were able to limit the Knicks offense, and they were able to limit Jalen Brunson, and they were able to foul Mitchell Robinson and make him miss free throws and all that. So it's the same team that built a 20-point lead also is the one that blew it in about 5 minutes of basketball. So you can look at all the film and all things that went well, and then also how they kind of collapsed there. You just don't want to see these kinds of things in the playoffs, but it's just one time. I still have a lot of confidence in their ability to come out of this one. Feel free to drop questions in the chat. I'll answer them in the YouTube comments tomorrow. And again, we'll have more coverage from practice on Tuesday afternoon. We'll have more coverage on Wednesday after the game. So thank you as always for watching. Appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of your night. And remember that the 3 best games in the NBA are all down 0-1. So that's a little bit of perspective for you.